Hi, welcome to Healing the Trauma Within. In this session, I am talking with Pauliana and Lara. We're going to be talking about releasing shame and guilt. A little bit about Pauliana. She is a single working mom to two teenagers. Her journey was a tough one as she struggled between wanting to be a good attorney and a great mother. She felt tremendous shame and guilt in some of the choices she had to make, but through the years, a change in mindset helped Pauliana learn how to do it all with balance and joy so that she was getting fulfillment from both her professional life and from her personal life. So welcome, Pauliana.
Hi, Tracy. How are you?
Good. How are you? It's great to talk to you again.
You too. Excited to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. So, guilt and shame is a big topic when it comes to trauma because, we harbor all types of guilt and shame depending on the different traumas. I don't think there's a trauma that's out there that we don't harbor some kind of guilt or shame or what if I had done this, what if I had done that. So
Absolutely.
how do we, I don't know, I mean, how do we just let's talk about how we get rid of it, how we stop it.
Um, I wish it was that simple
I know.
and just a one word thing like stop it by saying no or something like that. But if we can rewind, I just want to address the shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And I'm by no means a clinician. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physician. This is just what I feel in my little head and my very big heart. I think shame, I see shame as external. What will people think of me? How will people see the choices I made? What will people's judgment be of me? I see shame as external because
That makes
when
sense.
I was making choices as a working mom, the shame, I wasn't feeling that within. I was feeling it from how would my coworker perceive my decision. That's what made me feel shame. And what about the other moms? Or what if the fact that I can't get a nanny, I just can't afford it, or I'm choosing not to have somebody else pick my kids up after school? The shame was external. Guilt, I believe, or for me, was internal. Guilt was what I felt only about me. I felt so guilty that I, you know wanted to run out of the house for 3 minutes because I was about to lose my mind. Nobody was going to judge me about that because my neighbors didn't know why I was stepping outside, but the guilt was internal. It was just between my head and my heart because I felt guilty. And so I think over the years, what I learned is I have to learn to reconcile the external and the internal. What are people going to think? How do I feel? The shame for me was external, the guilt was internal. And at the end of the day, I had to bring those two very different emotions to a place where I could accept it. Meaning, I need to leave the house for 2 minutes because I'm going to either cry, start eating 2 boxes of Oreos, or I'm going to go and hide in the closet. I needed to step out of the house for 2 minutes. I didn't care what people felt. I didn't care what people thought because that was good for me at that moment. I needed to do that 3 minute little exercise. So it's dealing with shame and guilt for me. I think the process is it has to feel good for you. Everybody does things differently.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew moms who didn't work and had two nannies. I was like, what? How do you not work? You're home and you have two nannies. And here's me working, two kids. And then at some point, like you said in my intro, I became a single mom. I didn't know if I was coming or going, was it breakfast or dinner? And I don't know if that mom felt shame or guilt for being a stay-at-home mom and having two nannies. But guess what? She didn't care. That worked for her. And so I started looking at the decisions I was making as, is it working for me? Then that's what matters.
I like that. I like your definitions, the fact that shame is external, what others think of you, and then the guilt is internal. And as far as the shame goes, who cares what others think of you, right?
Ding,
We
ding,
put,
ding, ding, ding. I mean, it's so easy for us, Tracy, to say this,
I know,
on 2 Zoom screens. It's like, oh, who cares?
who cares?
It's so much deeper than that. But I think, you have to care. Like, I care about the decision I'm making. If it works for me, I don't care what my neighbor, my coworker, my mom, the lady at the drugstore, who cares? And that's kind of has to be the mantra. Like, that lady isn't in my shoes. So
Right.
for her to judge me and look at me because, true story, I had 2 babies and I went to the grocery store. I was holding my son's hand and my daughter was in the carrier, in the shopping cart. And I remember this so clearly, Tracy. I was grabbing bagels and I was having a hard time because my son was running, I was that mom, like doing all this. And another woman stared me down, picking up bagels at Ralph's. And I wanted to just look at her and say, this is what works for me, lady. I need groceries. I've got 2 kids. I don't have a nanny. They weren't screaming. They weren't having a tantrum. They weren't making a scene. They were just being 2 little bodies. And I was doing the best I could. But I got stared down by another woman in the bread aisle.
That's crazy.
So that's what I mean. That shame was external. I didn't think what I was doing was wrong. I was just going grocery shopping with my babies. But this woman, the way she looked at me made me feel like what I was doing was shameful. And that blew my mind. So for like 30 seconds, it hurt and it made me upset. And I was like, God, maybe I shouldn't be at the store with 2 kids this small. And then, past 30 seconds, I was like, well, if we don't come here, we're not going to eat. So what's worse, having some lady look down on me or us not having food?
Right.
So that's how it went that day.
And a lot of times, and I am super guilty of this, we put our judgment of ourselves onto what we think other people are thinking. So we're projecting our judgment. Oh, she must be thinking this. She must be thinking that. And she could just be standing there going, hurry up, lady, I need to get bagels. I mean, that could have all, seriously could have been what it was.
See, but that's where the guilt kicks in too.
Exactly.
I'm feeling because the way this woman looked at me, I'm feeling bad about myself. And you're absolutely right. Maybe she was just like, lady, hurry up. Or, maybe she didn't like the clothes I was wearing, or she thought I dressed my kids ugly, or I don't know. But it's that fear of, am I making the right choices? And then how do people feel about my choices? And so going back to the who cares, because again, if I didn't make the choice to take these 2 babies to the grocery store, we weren't going to have food. Right. So that lady can look at me, but you're right. It's the self-imposed shame and guilt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we put that around trauma, especially some of the more violent traumas, we put that, oh, people are going to think bad of me because I was in this situation, so let's say, for example, people are going to think bad of me because I put myself in a situation to be raped. Well, I didn't. I didn't. Yes, I was there. Yes, I was drinking, but that didn't put me in a situation to be raped. They just took it upon themselves to do that. And so we have to remember that other people's opinions of us are none of our business.
That's so true. But Tracy, when it comes to the trauma, I think what's a little different is the shame and guilt can be so deep and severe.
Oh, yes.
That it becomes debilitating for growth and hope and strength and positivity. I mean, that lady looking down on me at the bagel aisle was 30 seconds. Right. I forgot about her by the time I put the bagels in my cart. But deeper, much more serious trauma, like you're talking about, rape and other types of abuse, uh, I'm thankful and I'm fortunate that I'm not speaking from a personal experience, but what I believe and what I feel is the trauma is so deep that the steps to take to get past it are so big and overwhelming.
They are.
The steps are so big, like, how do I overcome this? How do I even talk about it? It's very easy for me to talk to women about shame and guilt because compared to the trauma you're talking about, mine is light. It's feeling shame and guilt about, having somebody else pick up my kids from school. It's shame and guilt about, taking a shower and actually conditioning my hair because, I don't want to take too long because I want to be a good mom and I want to spend time with my kids. So the shame and guilt that I generally speak about is so minute, if you will, compared to the deeper trauma. But I think the underlying common thread is it's self-imposed.
Yes.
The woman who got raped is still thinking, these are choices I made. And I don't believe that that's true. So it creates obstacles for the healing process.
It does. It does. And I have found, for me, one of the biggest things was to just forgive myself for all the feelings, the emotions, the shame and the guilt that I felt. And just love myself instead. And that was super hard. And it's something that I have to work on a daily basis. But being able to say, I forgive you for feeling this way. I forgive you for hating yourself because of this. I love you instead, is very empowering. Even if you don't believe it at first, you say it and you don't believe it, but it's still,
you just have to keep telling yourself. Yeah.
Oh, you froze up for a second.
If you start just telling yourself that, that's not where this started. That's not how this was supposed to happen. These are not choices I made. They're like baby steps to get to a place of forgiveness and acceptance and healing.
Absolutely. Now, as women, not necessarily trauma survivors, but as women, we're not good at this. We care too much what others think. We care too little about what we think. And it's just almost like it's encoded in our DNA to feel this way.
It's funny because I literally want to laugh right now when you're saying that, because maybe, a little bit being like our male counterparts would be beneficial, because half the time they don't give a crap about anything, about what they look like, what they smell like, what they're wearing, how much they ate. And there's something very comforting about that who gives a crap mentality, because it feeds your soul and your spirit if the only person you care about is you. And I'm making that universe very small, because at the end of the day, like I said, just my little example, I had to go to the grocery store. I had to fill my fridge with food, because when we came home from the grocery store and my kids wanted lunch, I would feel like a good mother, because here I am providing for them and nurturing them. But those were decisions I had to make, and I had no choice but to take them to the store with me. So the lady in the bagel aisle can go stuff her face with bagels. But, you're right. Women, again, it's self-imposed. What will people think? But men
they
don't give a crap.
They just don't care.
And I think there's there's a healthy component to that to a certain degree. I mean, not to the point where you're hurting others or
Right.
making other people feel bad about their decisions. But again, Tracy, it happens all in here. You know, it's head and heart. For men, you know, their head tells them they want to wear mismatching pants and shirts and they feel good about being out of the house dressed. That's all that matters. They don't care.
Yeah.
And we have to get a little closer to that place of I don't care. Who cares?
So how do we get out of our heads and into our hearts?
I believe it has to be in the moment. It has to be in the moment. I talk about an example. I'll make it very, very short and quick. I was working at a law firm. My managing attorney was a father of 5, and he was in the middle of a trial on a very, very big client. And daycare called because my son had a deep cough, and it's this thing called croup. I'm sure your audience has heard about it. It's like they call it the barking seal. And I was a little upset. Again, I didn't have freak out or have an overreaction. I didn't leave. I shared this story with his secretary, who was also a mother. I walked out of my office and she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, daycare just called," like very passing. Fast forward, long story short, my boss comes back from the middle of trial, pops his head into my office and says, "Oh, I heard your son has croup." I was like, why would you even know that? Well, his secretary told on me. This story is about 12 years old. I remember how I felt that day. And she was a mom. And so the shame guilt was by another mom. Instead of having my back and saying, "You know what, don't worry about it, croup, it's fine, they grow out of it," you know, instead of supporting me, she basically sold me out. And if I knew what I know, if I knew then what I know now about being in the moment, and when my boss popped his head in and said, "Oh, I heard your son's not feeling well," I was sick to my stomach, Tracy. I was so sick to my stomach because I thought, here we go. Me being a mom is going to impact my work and my profession and my productivity. And I felt, you know, I should have just shut my mouth and not said anything. Because me sharing with another mom, something very innocent and simple, turned into these sickening feelings of shame and guilt of they're going to look down on me and perceive me differently because I shared a very simple story of my son coughing. The point is how we get past that is at that moment, I shouldn't have felt so much shame and guilt for sharing such a simple story. So when my boss popped his head in and asked, again, what I know now, and this is, 12 years later,
Right.
he's fine. He's going to be great. Not the first time. To show I'm not ashamed and I don't feel guilty. But back then, literally, I crumbled. I was like, oh my God. Why did I open my big fat mouth? Because now my boss, who's in the middle of trial, like, don't you have documents to review or witnesses to prepare or so many more important things to do than come talk to me about my son's cough? It was a mindset issue. And so that's what I'm getting back to. If you can change how other people's imposition of shame and guilt on you, you receive that. If you can change how you take that in, I think it'll be less damaging. It's a very long story, Tracy, of saying you can also filter how the shame and guilt comes in.
Right. How you receive what others are putting out.
Absolutely. And it's not easy. And I'm not professing, I'm not saying it's easy. Like I said, 12 years later, I still remember how crappy I felt. But
yeah,
now I know better that it's almost like filters or a door. I can give the output. I was concerned, I was talking to another mom and maybe she had advice or maybe she could be comforting or maybe she would give me some guidance. Oh no, she sold me out and like told on me. And so I've started to work on letting the shame and guilt, more the shame seep in, because then that turns into guilt.
Yeah. And, you know, when in fact, she should have been the one that felt shame for having a big mouth and running it.
You would think, right? Like, I was a
One would
young
think.
mom.
Yeah. Well, Pollyanna, thank you so much. This has been fantastic talking with you about this. And
I'm so happy to be here. It's such an important conversation, Tracy. I know you do amazing work with respect to getting the message out there. I know my subject is much more lighter, but I believe that, again, there's a common thread of how we let it come in and how it impacts us. So
absolutely.
I hope your audience has gotten some benefit of
I think
hearing from me.
I know I did. Number one, the definitions between shame and guilt, the fact that it's all self-imposed, so there was a lot of great messages in there. So thank you.
So thankful for our time today, Tracy.
And listeners, thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you in one of the other sessions.